Today's story is different from the rest of the stories. Before we start, like, subscribe. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary has always had a reputation as being impossible to escape from since its construction in 1910. That's because, with its high walls and armed guards, as well as its location 1.25 miles off the coast of San Francisco, no one has ever succeeded in escaping from this terrifying prison surrounded by water. But the escape of the Alcatraz prisoners in 1962 showed that although the chances of escape were difficult, they were not impossible. Using papier-mâché heads to trick guards into thinking they were asleep, Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin successfully escaped from Alcatraz Federal Prison late at night before disappearing without a trace. Officially, the three men were never seen again. The FBI and local law enforcement spent years trying to track them down, to no avail. Numerous theories have been put forward about what may have happened to the escapees. Some have suggested that they simply died while trying to swim to Angel Island. Others claim to have seen the men in places like Brazil, Maryland, and Florida. After 17 years, the FBI was forced to close the Alcatraz prisoner escape, and to this day, no one is completely sure of the fate of Morris and the Anglin brothers. But we know how they succeeded in carrying out their daring escape. To understand how difficult the task of escaping from Alcatraz was, it is necessary to know the history of the prison. Before Alcatraz was used as a prison, the island, located off the coast of San Francisco, served as a military fort dating back to the 1850s. Then, in 1910, the U.S. Army built a military prison on the island. 20 years passed, and on October 12, 1933, the U.S. Department of Justice took over the building, modernizing the facilities and increasing security to use the island as a high-security prison. Because the island was surrounded by water, and because of the strong currents around San Francisco Bay, prison officials believed there could be no effective escape. For a time, it was considered the most secure prison in the United States. For a while, it seemed that their assumptions were correct. Before 1962, 12 escape attempts were made at Alcatraz, none of which were successful. In these cases, prisoners were returned to prison, shot to death, or drowned in San Francisco Bay. However, that changed on June 11, 1962, when inmates Clarence Anglin, John Anglin, Alan West, and Frank Morris made their most daring attempt to escape from Prison Island. Their adventure began months earlier when an escape plan was hatched by Frank Morris, a criminal who had been involved in robbery, armed robbery, and drug dealing as a foster child in Washington, D.C. Morris was the leader of the group and was considered among the upper elite of the prison population in terms of intelligence according to intelligence tests of the time. It was Maurice who gathered the remaining participants in his plan. He recruited John and Clarence Anglin, a Georgia couple who had been robbing banks together since they were children, and Alan West, a car thief from New York. Maurice gathered these men together to carry out his bold plan. Over the course of 6 months, the two men used stolen saw blades and spoons, as well as a homemade drill made from a vacuum cleaner, to gradually expand the ventilation ducts in their cells. They worked at night, using Morris's accordion playing to mask the sound of the drilling. During the day, they covered the holes they made with cardboard painted the same color as the walls of their cells. Expanding these networks allowed prisoners to enter an unguarded service tunnel extending behind the cells. There, they stored their true masterpiece, a 6x14-foot inflatable rubber boat made from 50 rubber raincoats stolen or donated by other prisoners. While they were constructing the canoe in the tunnel over a period of months, the conspirators concealed their absence from their cells by making disguised doll heads and placing them on the pillows of their beds while they worked. The heads were made of a papier-mâché-like material created from soap and toilet paper and were painted in a way that resembled a human face. When all their preparations were completed, the prisoners escaped. They exited their cell and entered the tunnel, except for West, who was unable to remove the grate covering the vent when it got stuck and was left behind. After that, the three men, using a rubber boat, climbed through the ventilation shaft connected to the tunnel to reach the roof of the prison. They then slid down a pipe and jumped over two 12-foot-high fences covered in barbed wire, heading toward a blind spot for prison guards, where they inflated their inflatable boat. Sometime after approximately 10 p.m. that night, the prisoners embarked on their journey on the makeshift rubber raft toward an unknown fate. After prison guards discovered that Morris and the Anglin brothers were missing the next morning, thanks to the doll heads they had left in their cells, police were able to discover that the escapees were planning to sail to Angel Island, an uninhabited island in San Francisco Bay less than 2 miles away, however. FBI investigators at the time concluded that given the strong currents and unfavorable weather conditions in the Gulf that night, it was unlikely that the men survived. They closed their file on the escaped prisoners in 1979, believing the men had likely died at sea. Many people dispute this view and assert that the three men succeeded in escaping from prison. Experts and an experimental computer model demonstrated that it was possible for the men to have survived, although it would require a number of factors to be in their favor. These factors included Anglin's sisters, who came out in 2012 to claim they received a phone call from John Anglin shortly after the escape, as well as a birthday card from him later that year. One of their brothers, Robert, revealed on his deathbed in 2010 that he had been in contact with John and Clarence from 1963 until about 1987. The family says the brothers fled to Brazil, where family friend Fred Britzi met them at one point in 2012 and even provided photos of them in the country. The FBI denied the allegations and maintained that it was unlikely that the men in the photo were the Anglin brothers. As for the mastermind behind this adventure, a man claiming to be Frank Morris' cousin came forward in 2011 claiming that he met Morris in San Diego after the escape, but it is not known if these claims are true. What is known is that one night in 1962, these men attempted the impossible, and perhaps even succeeded in doing so. This is the end of the story. I hope you like it. Don't forget to like and subscribe.